If you've ever felt like you wanted to start a podcast, if you have a podcast and you are looking to optimize it, you are in the right place. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you why you should be starting a podcast. And the second thing I'm going to do is tell you how I actually started a podcast. The third thing I'm going to do is explain to you how I got a $25 million referral from podcasting without having a massive audience. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give you access to my podcast producer. Correct. I am going to give you the ability to work with the person who I work with and many other top podcasters work with. And the super hack with that, very, very low cost, very, very high time savings. He actually runs 2 shows for me, and all I have to do is this. And then as soon as I'm done my YouTube, he actually takes the episode, syndicates it across all the podcasting platforms, optimizes it, and he's actually helped double the growth of my podcast. So if that sounds like something that you want to stick around for, hit the subscribe and the notification button. If you have a podcast, this is your turn to drop a hook. Drop it, your comment in the jump in the comments. Drop the name of your podcast. If you want, feel free to drop a link to it after this show. I'll go back and I'll check out all your podcasts and we'll dive right into it. But before I even talk about my podcast, I think the first thing that I need to do is show you some actual statistics. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to share my screen. If you are on the audio only version, I will explain what we're looking at so you can feel like you're getting a lot of value. But if you're on Clubhouse live for the segment, click the link at the top of the room so you can journey with me. The first photo you're seeing is beautiful Grand Bend, Ontario. That is the market that I serve. Yes, we have beaches in Canada. Yes, they are spectacular and beautiful. We have gorgeous lakefront properties. If you're looking for a real estate agent anywhere in the world, contact me. I'm your guy. But let's talk about podcasting. So I'm bringing up some stats that are showcasing every single episode of the Joe Rogan podcast right now reaches about 11 million people. The reason I brought this stat up, regardless of how you feel about Joe Rogan, is if you look at the other shows that produce episodes that get high ratings, Tucker Carlson, who's no longer on the air, but he was getting about 3.2 million people per episode. The 5, Hannity, Fox, The Ingram, Rachel Maddow, MSNBC, and CNN. You can see that Joe Rogan is like almost 4 times the size of every single one of those shows every time he drops an episode. That is actually why you're seeing massive political candidates, people that are looking to gain followings, trying to get on podcasts like Joe Rogan. It is actually way bigger than traditional media for 2 reasons. One, every time he drops an episode, it gets 11 million viewers. The second reason is it lives on platforms like Spotify, and they actually will run clips channels on YouTube. Meaning every episode may have gotten 11 million views, but their views actually escalate. One massive secret to our real estate success is our marketing gets 5 to 10 times the views as MLS, because MLS puts your listing up and then it drops. We put your listing up and then we use the algorithms to get a larger audience. He's doing the exact same thing. And we are in the gold rush of podcasting. I started podcasting back in 2015. I didn't really get serious about it until 2020, 2022. I'll walk you through that journey. I'll tell you how I'm shooting my show now, how I'm producing it. But this matters. Trust me, the future of media, traditional media is a part of it. Paid media is a strategy a lot of people are going to do. But podcasting is more like earned media. So that is why it matters. My man, Levi Latzik. So Levi's an interesting story. I'll stop screen sharing for a second and I'll actually try and pull up his passive prospecting book that he just wrote. Sent me a copy. Phenomenal book. Here we go. I'm going to share this book with you. Everybody here should actually go buy it. Explains YouTube. Levi's a dude that came in to the real estate space, started a YouTube channel specifically around creating neighborhood tour videos, created a large business around that, but realized that you can actually scale attention for prospecting in any businesses. This actually dissects YouTube in a very, very big way. So I'd encourage that you guys read this, but this is proof that new media is the future of where things are going. I don't know if Levi has a podcast yet. He's been on the Prime People podcast. Levi, you should definitely get a podcast. If you haven't, my man, we got to definitely get you one, and you should watch this episode and I'll get you to do it. Second person I'm going to talk about actually is another good friend of mine, Dustin Brown. So Dustin Brown, there was a crew of us back in like 2014. Me, Dustin, Bucky Brome, Chelsea Pites, Shannon Milligan, Michelle Belisari was part of that as well too. And we were called the Snap Pack. So on Snapchat, Gary Vee said, everybody get on Snapchat. We all got on Snapchat and we ended up getting into social media together. And it's interesting is a guy like Dustin started his podcast, and actually I pulled up Chelsea Pites as well. And they started podcasting consistently and building large audiences. And what it led to was now Dustin Brown is one of the featured people on Broke Agent Media. So a lot of people know the Broke Agent from Instagram. He put out funny pictures and funny videos. But if you look at what these people are doing, they are launching full-blown media networks that will rival the CNNs and the Foxes. And this has never happened before, right? You've never been able to come into an industry and say, look, we now own Broke Agent Media. We get more clicks and more views than some of the largest news broadcasting stations on the planet. This is a real thing. And it started with podcasting. I've been on multiple episodes of Massive Agent Podcasting. The secret to Dustin's success is the fact that he is consistent. That is it. Above everything else, he puts out an episode after episode after episode. He pre-records, never misses a week. And most people that achieve success on social, it is the consistency above everything else. So if you learn nothing else in this episode and you want to start a podcast, I'm going to show you how to do that. All you need to do is keep putting out episodes. I don't even care if they're great. I don't even care if one person's watching. I don't even care if 12 people or 300 people or 1,000 people are watching. What I want you to do is press record, put it out to the universe, and then continue to sharpen your sword and refine your podcast. Mine has changed multiple times. I'll tell you some things I did well. I'll tell you some things I did poorly, but the consistency is what is going to get you there. Same thing as YouTube. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down a little bit about my podcast. If you go to Apple, you'll find all of the episodes here. It is called the Prime People Podcast. This is the one I've been doing for the longest time. I got 155 episodes. If you go onto YouTube, you can see a lot of the video episodes. So it started as an audio only podcast. And then I realized, why am I doing audio and trying to do video at the same time? Why don't I just do a video podcast and then I'll put that out as audio? So I said you'd get the opportunity to work with my podcast producer. The secret to how I'm able to do so much content and use my podcast as a pillar of content is I do my podcast live on my YouTube channel every Thursday, 1 to 2. I have a life. Sometimes I go on vacation and I pre-record. I'm actually playing around with, am I getting more traction with a pre-recorded podcast or should I do a live podcast? So I'm like A/B testing, but it's Thursdays, 1 to 2. So if you subscribe to this channel, you can go to my Prime People podcast. You can see people like Shay and Vidyata. I had her on yesterday. They run one of the largest luxury real estate brokerages in our entire area. I found out yesterday that she's been fighting for human trafficking for like 18 years. I had no idea. In Hawaii, she tells this in-depth story about how her philanthropy and what she's built is actually one of the biggest drivers in her life. She's integrated it with luxury real estate. Fascinating story. Our friend Barbara Majeski crushed it. Many of you know Barbara. This was a very interesting episode. Jazz Takar, Glenda Baker was on, Mike Heddle, Mark Hominick, who's an actual UFC legend, actually went to Adrenaline MMA. I've trained with Mark for probably going on 20 years now, not since my hip surgery, but I will be getting back in the gym. And then Tom's story, how to build a YouTube channel. So I'm giving you a snapshot, if you're listening to this, of all the different topics that I cover on my podcast. So as I'm doing this live training on podcasting, I'm giving you the ability to go and follow the Prime People podcast and learn from these incredible people while you're doing the dishes, cutting the lawn, or driving to work. This is why podcasting is becoming so popular. There's a lot of people these days want to learn, they want to grow, and they've never had access to people like we do these days, where if you're listening to this and you want me to have somebody specifically on my podcast, let me know. Because I've had people like Ryan Serhant, Scott McGilvery, Levi Latzek, and Kim Walsh-Phillips, and all these amazing people on my podcast. When I reach out to people, it's very different than a cold outreach saying, hey, do you want to come on my podcast with an email script? I probably get 50 of those a week. They all go to spam pretty much. Like, unless you get brought to me by somebody who I co-sign, like the beautiful Ramon Ray, I'm looking at his smiling face right here on my app as I'm looking at it. You're not really going to get on my podcast, right? If Ramon reaches out to me and says, hey, I have this person, I really do think that they're doing the thing and they're a practitioner, sure, I'll do my research, but that's going to go a lot further on getting a guest on my podcast than somebody hiring a podcast booker to send me the same email I've seen 50 times. So going back to how I actually run my show now, initially it started off as like, I'm going to interview these business owners that nobody knows and shine some light on them. Started doing that, but I realized I was missing the authority piece that Kim Walsh-Phillips was talking about. And I never wanted to be that guy that wanted the photo op and took the photo with Ryan Serhant or Scott McGilvery, but I had real relationships with these people. So I started shooting podcasts with people recognized. And then that led to being able to book more guests. And now when I look at my scheduling for my podcast and like, how do I decide who's coming on? How do I decide the structure of the show? That's what we're going to get into next. So initially, like I said, it started off with me thinking I'm going to become the mayor of my town. I'm going to interview all the local business owners. It's going to lead to real estate business. And there's a few different ways you can look at your show. Sometimes people will say, I'm going to start a podcast because I want to make X amount of dollars, right? And because I want to become known as the mayor of my town, and I'm going to be very focused on the content being engaging with that audience. I think that that could be a great thing for you, because if that's what you're very focused on, you're going to build an audience around that thing. If you like underwater basket weaving or you like Hot Wheels, like if you started a podcast that was completely geared around that, talked about Hot Wheels for an hour, took that podcast, dropped it into an app like Get Munch and turned it into 20 clips and then put it on an Instagram channel that was all about Hot Wheels, you would actually grow a following probably fairly quickly because it's very niched. If you're a real estate agent like Levi Lotzek and you want to teach people how to prospect, you could put out a podcast about prospecting and really dial it into that audience. When I looked at the goal of what my podcast, the Prime People podcast, was specifically, and I say specifically a lot, fully aware of that, what I actually wanted it to be was a ladder for people in my community. I'm actually very happy. We have a lot of business. The way I make my money isn't from monetizing my podcast. Truthfully, like I don't coach. I've been asked to. I've been offered a lot of money for consulting. I've been offered a lot of money on the media side to have our media production company work with different groups. I did that for a little bit and realized that I don't want more clients, right, to serve. I'm focused on real estate. I want to be known as the best real estate agent on the planet, the most trusted real estate agent brokerage on the planet. How I do make money is the interconnection of all the different people in my network. So what I realized was I was getting from my podcast was phone calls whenever somebody needed a real estate agent, and I would connect them with the right real estate agent, or I would work with them in my community just because I had earned their trust. So how I decided to change my show wasn't to go down the pathway of only interviewing real estate agents because my end goal was to recruit real estate agents, right? I didn't really want to grow an audience that was completely focused around that because my brokerage doesn't recruit. We have a waiting list of people that want to join Prime. We're not your average mom and pop real estate brokerage. We're not your average hybrid real estate brokerage or virtual brokerage. That's not our model. We are a company that specializes in real estate market intelligence, marketing, and negotiations, right? So to get access to us, it has to be very similar to getting access to being on my show. It's by referral only. We select our clients as much as our clients select us because we're that good at what we do. And my podcast wasn't going to be a driver for agents, right? That's why you see it being so varied and having a UFC fighter on as much as I'm having real estate agents on, as much as I'm having chefs on. Is the audience that I actually have is everybody that's here. If anybody here is in business, drop something in the comments and tell me what you do, because you will see the types of people that are here. I see people that are in fitness, Dream Plan Start Go. I see Core Element. What's up, brother? Yes, faith is a big part of who I am and what I do, and I always talk about it. I see Living in Dallas, Texas, my man Levi. I see Sell Estates, Sheila Stantini, Olivier Maurice. I see you, commercial real estate agent from Quebec. Amazing, amazing agent. Like I have a very varied audience who are in business. So now I'm very clear on what my content is. It's business and marketing, right? But Justin, you're running a podcast, and what are your clients going to think about you? Like, are you distracted from selling houses? You say you want to be good at real estate, but you're running a podcast. But guess what my podcast has done? My podcast has given my clients more exposure, because Shay, who runs one of the biggest luxury real estate brokerages in my entire area, was on my podcast yesterday. She follows me on IG. And when I post the beautiful lakefront property at 26 Huron on my IG yesterday, that is perfect for a client that maybe she has 2 hours away that wants a lakefront property in Grand Bend, guess who she's going to call, right? So I'm layering and stacking everything that I'm due towards a goal. I almost said specifically again. Towards a goal for a reason that is in line with my passion and my purpose, right? So the Prime People podcast right now, here's a tactical breakdown of how I actually prep my show. So what I'll do is, for booking guests, they have to fall into the category of practitioner. If I don't want to do a deep dive on YouTube, I'll bring Levi on. If I want to talk about, thought leadership and speaking, I'll bring Ramon on. If I want to talk about growing your audience, I'll bring Kim on. I can go on and on, right? Like I'm looking for people that I know are actually doing the thing. Second thing I look for is how they treat other people, right? So I look at how they show up in the community. Remember, The same people you see on the way up are the same people you're going to see on the way down. So are people living their true core values and how they speak in the public forum? I have taken shows off my podcast for things I've seen after the fact. So unfortunately, just because of the nature of the speed of how I grew the show, and I'm just one guy, I've had people on my podcast that I actually regretted having on, and I've since taken down some of those episodes. I've had guests booked that I won't have on in the future, or canceled episodes because of reasons on the back end. So I think you need to maintain the integrity of your show and be very clear on who you're having on. But let's just say I have Kim Walsh Phillips on. I'm going to use her as a case study. First thing I'm going to do is when I book Kim on my show, I'm going to understand she's busy. So I'm going to make it very easy for her. So I'll show, it's not up right now, but there's a form that I have that I'll send to Kim that will allow her to pick whenever she wants to shoot the episode. Once she picks the day she's shooting the episode, it goes to, used to be me, but it'll go to my executive assistant right now, and it's locked in on the calendar. Then instead of me asking her for her headshot, her for her bio, and her, why am I giving Kim homework? If she's this really busy person, she's not going to do that. The people you want to have on your show are busy people. So what you need to do, in my opinion, is create a very simple SOP. And here's a snapshot of what that could look like. Go to Kim's Instagram, copy her bio, because she probably put a lot of work into her bio. Put that in a note. Take a really nice photo of her off her Instagram, because she selects photos she really likes of herself, and put that in the note. Then go to your podcast description and what's your show about? Then go to ChatGPT and tell ChatGPT, hey, I need you to create an amazing title, SEO optimized for YouTube, and a description and keywords for a podcast where I'm interviewing Kim Walsh Phillips. Paste her bio so it knows who she is. Then say, this is a description of the show. Can you make sure to target or optimize the title and description and keywords for this audience? Now it's going to output a title, description, and keywords. You can't rely on AI to do your job for you. AI is a tool. Read the title, description, and keywords and optimize it for Kim as a human being, right? For the research I've done on her, I'll optimize that. Now I have 90% of my show set up. If you really have never done podcasting before and you're like, how do I actually do a show? I'm so scared, right? Here's a super hack. Take all of that and then tell ChatGPT, hey, can you create an outline for a podcast interview I'm going to do, and give me bullet points of what I need to do and when I need to do it. My biggest recommendation for podcasting is don't script it. Bullet points are what most of the best people in the world do, and they just stick to the bullet points. And the hack that I've learned after 10 years is start off with a hook. Tell people why they're watching it, right? I told you from the outset exactly what I'm going to do. I tell you how I podcast. I'm going to tell you why it matters first. Then I'm going to actually show you how to work with my podcasting producer. Like, I gave you reasons to stick around, right? Then you jump into the actual podcast, because that's what people are there for. I used to put in like a 20-second clip. It was a sizzle reel. I spent all this money on it. It was awesome. It was me like walking to speaking engagements with cameras and B-roll. I liked it, but my audience could care less, right? They're there for the content. Christina Smallhorn, massive YouTuber, came on my channel and told me that. She's like, why are you doing that? And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, just start talking. And she's like, even the hook, like, I've A/B tested, is the hook worth doing or is it not worth doing? She even says, like, just press live and start talking to your guest. I actually agree with that if people know what your content is. The reason I do the hook is a lot of you people don't know who I am. I don't think I'm a celebrity. I don't want to be an influencer. I'm just a guy who's uber curious, and I'm at least letting you know what you're buying into, right? I think if I get to a certain size and scale, I may not do the hooks as in depth as I do. But if you're starting off from scratch, feel free to use these hacks. If you have a podcast, ask yourself, are you at that place where you can just start talking, or should you build out an actual script and bullet points and everything else? So once I finish the show outline, what I'll do then is make sure everything's set up online. So a couple of sites that I use, and you can go to justinconoco.com/resources. These are shows I've been on. I haven't even talked about that. Like, being on other people's podcasts has really helped me grow quite a bit. But if you go to the resources section of my website, I use StreamYard, which is right here. So StreamYard is what I actually am streaming on right now that I can do the screen sharing on. I got all these little like brand overlays that I can throw on here to show you different things. Here's a fun thing, actually. So here was an old intro.
Welcome to the Prime People Podcast.
I'm going to turn that off. That was the intro I used to have before my episode. So StreamYard gives you the ability to do all these things. Firefly's Data AI is an AI tool that you can use as well. And then TubeBuddy, I wouldn't even get into that. That's more about actual YouTube stuff. So I use StreamYard for actually streaming the podcast. Once the podcast streams, I send it to my producer, which I will give you the opportunity to engage with him at the end of this episode. And all he does is he'll take it and he'll put it into an app called Buzzsprout. I should put that on my resources page. RR, if you're watching this, can you please put the link to Buzzsprout on my site? Here's the actual website for anybody that is looking for it. BUZZSPROUT. And this will syndicate it across all platforms. So if you're a single creator and you can't hire a podcast producer, and trust me, he's not expensive, but even if you want to save a little bit of money, you can do it yourself. You can drop the video. You don't have to edit anything. You drop the video file into Buzzsprout. It'll go on Spotify. It'll go on every podcasting platform, iHeartRadio. Very simple. And I think it's like $12 a month, or it was. Maybe it's like 20 now. So then once the podcast goes out or it's scheduled, what you can do is I would share your podcast out. So Kim shared in her last segment, create mini clips, share them on your different social media platforms. And those people that you have on your show, tag them because they will reshare your content. And also super hack, if you really want to get ninja with this, you can actually send your podcast to your guest. And if they have a team, they'll chop it up into micro content and likely reshare it out on their platform. And then it just scales and grows. What I shared at the beginning of the podcast was Joe Rogan does 11 million views per episode. It is probably in the hundreds of millions of views by the time you look at the micro content and the shared out clips. A lot of people don't realize that, right? I can have a live stream with 7 people on my Prime People podcast, yet reach thousands of people, and nobody sees the metrics on the back end. That is the scale at which this stuff is growing. You don't need 10,000 followers. You don't need 1,000 downloads a month. Trust me, it has worked in a massive way. And being on another person's podcast actually led to me speaking to a private Facebook group of 140,000 real estate investors on topics I'm very dialed in on, chopped it up for an hour, and that's what led to a $25 million referral. So start to finish, that person found me because of the podcasting, invited me to be a guest on a live to a gigantic Facebook group of 140,000 people. And because I delivered the value that he thought I was going to bring, it led to a conversation where I linked him up with Ryan Serhant in Miami, and they're working on a deal that is a very large scale transaction. And it didn't come from me getting the referral. It came from me recording consistently enough to earn that trust to get that referral. Whether that referral works out or not, or whatever comes of it, it doesn't matter to me. I know it sounds crazy for me to say that, but I can tell you story after story after story where if you want to work with somebody in Austin, Texas, you want to do a deal in the UK, Texas, BC, I'm your guy. I'm the person you should be DMing because we can do real business together. And I know Ryan, like he's my mentor. I've worked with him since 2018. I can get you in touch with people across the planet that I actually know. Fun fact about the real estate industry, most times when you ask for a referral, they just call the same logo that they work at in another city. And they usually send you some random junior agent they've never met. They have no idea who's running your file. That's a fact. I don't do that. I actually have personal connections and contacts that I reach out to, and I vet these people. Are they actually working on investment properties? Are they the right fit for you? What's the market doing down there? Like I'm actually involved in the process. And that's what led to that, right? So started with podcasting, but you can do real business from it. Now, promised I'd give you the ability to work with my podcasting producer. And I only do this a couple of times a year. So here's how you're going to do it. First thing you got to do, smash that notification, that subscribe button, jump in the comments. Let me know if you want to work with my producer. And then let me share my screen here. All I ask is that you go to the Prime People podcast because we're talking podcasting. Make sure you subscribe to it, but I want you to leave a review. That is how you're going to get access to my guy. All you're going to do is you're going to leave a review, take a little screenshot, and then send it to me on Instagram. So I am justin.conoco. Very easy to find. And send me a screenshot of the review and I will get you direct access. I'll do a personal introduction. I'll take my time out of my day to make sure you get the best podcast producer on the planet. He actually works with many top podcasters. And the best thing about him is he saves you time and money. Yes, he costs money, but you need to buy back your time. If you look at what you make in a year, divide it by 4, that is roughly what your per hour, fee should be. So are you wasting your time focusing on learning how to become a great podcast producer, or do you just want to create a great podcast? Jump in the comments. Let me know. I'm going to go back over to Clubhouse for a couple minutes. I hope you enjoyed this episode. of my show. If you'd like me to do any specific topics or you have any guests you want on the Prime People podcast, send me a DM on Instagram. I actually reply to those messages myself. If not, I'll just keep pumping out the content. See you every Thursday for Prime People 1 to 2 on this channel, or Friday mornings at 7 a.m. But I'll catch